Just a little bit of my background and how I got into this work. I'm a mom of college kids and have been a leader of teams for years and years, 26 years in sales and marketing leadership, and a lot of work growing mid-sized companies, taking companies from 45 million to 65 million in revenue, or 65 to 120 million, scaling to new states and new markets, and really taking them through all the digital transformation that was digital marketing, customer journeys, chat, all of the sales and marketing processes that really helped our teams be effective in the customer database. And this team in the middle is my team at the Metro YMCA when I decided after 23 years, mostly on the road across the US, coast to coast, working in senior living, to be a little bit closer to home, help this team go through their digital transformation in 2023. And at the end of that last summer was when I realized these marketing teams I've built, like that little team up at the top there that you see, and all of the teams in the field that I've built to do sales, all their roles are going to change with the way AI is permeating our environment. And I've always done change management and I'm passionate about it. And I got really passionate about this kind of change management. So started RevOp AI in the fall of last year. Really excited to be working with small and mid-sized businesses because I think we're at this really cool inflection point where we have the opportunity to leap ahead of bigger companies that are very compliance focused. And not that there isn't risk we need to talk about, we'll talk about that today, but companies that are going to have a lot of layers of decision making and really large systems to implement and have to take a long time. So if you're part of an organization that has the ability to make fast decisions and pivot and learn quickly and do change management, you really have the opportunity in 2024 and 2025 to leap ahead in a really exciting way. And just one piece of that is customer journey. It's really hard to niche down within the AI world, but today we are really going to narrow down and talk about that customer experience. So we're going to chat a little bit about some of the latest research on customer behavior, take a comprehensive look at what that customer journey is from initial touch to your brand to someone being a return customer. We're going to talk a little bit about a case study that we did on one of our previous clients at RevOp AI that we worked with earlier this year. And then we're going to talk about some principles for implementing AI, how to do that change management in a cost-effective way and in an effective way with your team. So when we talk about customer journey, more and more every single year, I'm talking with teams about an omni-channel approach. And by that, I mean omni-channel, omnipresent, being present everywhere, because you probably already have experienced this in your own industry, that depending on the industry you're in, 70 to 80% of the shopping experience is now happening without the touch of an individual salesperson or an individual person. And think about your own experience, whether it's shopping for shoes online or shopping for a new home or a new car. Think about how many of those things you do without ever talking to a live person. And all of those opportunities are opportunities a brand seizes or misses. And recent research from NICE, and all the research is cited in this presentation that you'll get afterwards with links so you can take a deeper look. 81% of customers say they want more self-service options, not fewer. I think this is a real change in customer behavior. If you look back 15 or 20 years when self-checkout started and those kinds of things, and we were really uncomfortable with it. Now we're comfortable pulling the QR code for a menu or going online at 11 o'clock at night to self-serve our health insurance. Two-thirds of all the people surveyed actually say they prefer chat to a live customer service agent. So there really is demand for folks to be able to self-guide that shopping process, that whatever they're choosing and shopping for, whether it's a B2B or a B2C environment, and they are everywhere except reading your email. So I think when we've thought about customer journeys in the past, we think a lot about a series of touches with emails. What's that journey someone gets when they first inquire with you or become a customer? But I love to pull up the Internet Minute, and the 2024 one isn't out yet. This will look very different with Chat GPT and LLM behavior, but you can see people are sending in a single minute across the world 18 million chat messages, text messages. They do 10.4 million posts on Instagram. Those are just a few of the metrics. And you can see even in 2023, LLM searches, things on ChatGPT, Claude, Now Meta AI and Gemini, those searches were already at 3,000 searches in a single minute in 2023. So just imagine what that number will look like for 2024. If you're someone who's involved in marketing in a significant way or sales, you want to dig into this Pew Research Center study that I've linked at the bottom. You will really see how social behavior continues to change and evolve. And the winners are changing. Facebook is getting much older, as we all know. Reddit is growing in its usage. YouTube is a real dominator. 90% of every age group uses YouTube. So we'll talk later about how video really is king in the customer journey experience. But let's first kind of get that full picture of what does the customer journey look like. And hopefully this visual will help you think about your own company and your own business a little bit. Think about where people get to know you in the first place. Do they hear you on a podcast or on a radio interview? Do you run into them at an on-site event at the chamber or through a meetup? Do they find you through your great content that you're posting through organic search? Or maybe you're doing outbound email in your company or outbound outreaches through LinkedIn, social media, SMS, those kinds of things. So that's that gaining attention part of the customer journey. And then we get into some consideration. And at that point, someone's visiting your website. They still haven't talked to you yet. And if you don't have great analytics, you won't know they have any behavior interacting with your brand. You might get an inbound email inquiry from them at that point. And that consideration phase is long or short, depending on what you're selling, right? If it's buying a pair of shoes, it might be one evening. If it is moving to a retirement community or buying a home, it's going to be a much longer consideration cycle. And certainly in the B2B environment that a lot of you are in, it's a much longer cycle with a lot of decision makers involved. And I'm going to share a case study that gets to a sale like that in just a few minutes. Then in the buying process, there's everything from invoicing and billing and contract signing to building community through your Slack community or through your customer service team, how clients continue to interact through a customer service portal if you have one, and then how you get paid and they become a repeat customer and a reference for you. One of the very first things that I do when I sit down to work on customer journey with clients is to really help them start to distinguish first for what's your returning customer value, that lifetime value of those returning customers, and how much new customer acquisition do you need to continue to grow, so we can really start to weigh where we're putting resources initially building out that customer journey. So where does artificial intelligence fit into all that? Well, there was a study that just came out, the Stanford AI Index, that came out at the end of April, and this is adoption as reported by companies across the US. Across the US, companies are adopting artificial intelligence at a pretty dramatic rate. I think this is a very surprising report compared to things we were seeing 6 months and 9 months ago when companies felt really frozen in how they start AI implementation. So fully a quarter of companies have got some kind of artificial intelligence. And a lot of this is voice to text or staff prompting in contact center automation. So think about your customer experience space when someone becomes a customer. A little over a quarter folks have automated there. 23% of companies are doing personalization. That's a lot of what we'll talk about today, really creating that personalized experience. Almost as many folks using artificial intelligence in customer acquisition, and that's everything from developing content to delivering content, a lot of the things that we'll talk about today. Really, customer journey is touched by all three of those first areas, as well as peripherally touched by enhancements to products and creation of new Gen AI-based products. We're not going to get into that on this conversation. So where does artificial intelligence become an important tool to support that really personalized customer journey? This is those same stages, termed just a little bit differently, but a lot of the same tools are used throughout. So if you think about targeted prospecting, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today and how we use analytics to really look at who are your segments of current customers, how do we find more people like that. So a lot of the really meaningful work that can reduce your cost of acquisition of new customers and really niche you into the customers who most want your product really happens at that awareness phase. I'm amazed at how many mid-sized companies are still doing very broad-based marketing with so many opportunities to really customize who they touch on social media with AI algorithms and who they're touching through list purchases and really using data both inside their own database and outside. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. In that interest phase, if you're not using SMS and chat, those are really important tools to continue to engage and cultivate prospects once they've inquired. And for lead capture and acquisition, it's amazing when teams that I've worked with and clients that I've had have implemented chat, how much their lead capture improve because they've got that agent available 24/7, right? And so many of those chats in the past were rule-based and could be really frustrating if not one of the 5 things that were really important to you were in those rules for the chat. This is really, I think, one of the areas where we're seeing leaps ahead in customer experience, and we'll talk a lot more about chat today. And then that consideration phase, when you're bringing the decision-making committee together and everybody's got different needs in the decision-making process, really personalizing the messages that those folks are receiving and personalizing the way that they are being communicated with. I had a boss early in my career who said the golden rule is treating someone as you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treating them as they want to be treated. And this is really the magic of artificial intelligence is it does allow us to really be able to gather the information about the customer that allows us to treat, if I use my YMCA example, a soccer mom really differently in the time of day that we communicate with her and the messages that we're sending about summer camp compared to the older adult who's taking advantage of their Silver Sneakers membership and really relies on the Y for their community and their connection in addition to their fitness. Those are some of the exciting things you really get to get into in telling the customer story as we do the data analytics around this. Then, of course, we get into the decision-making and referral. We'll spend a little less time on those today, simply because I want to have time for you guys to ask questions. So let's talk a little bit about what does that build look like when you're actually using AI to figure out what that journey is and then to do the building. And I'm going to share an example with you of a Mountain West specialized construction company. They build phenomenal fitness facilities that are outdoor and indoor athletic fields. And they're about 10 years old, 20 employees, had really grown organically with soccer lovers and then expanded their business lines and really found that they were ready to shift their client focus from that B2C customer who was passionate about soccer, wanted to play every day, got really excited about their beautiful fields and the product. And this is exactly how they marketed them with beautiful photos of their awesome product. And they really realized that YMCAs, JCCs, community organizations that were focused on wellness, fitness, and community were much more suited because they had land, they had access to resources, and a really compelling business case to bring in these products. They brought me in toward the end of 2023 to help them make this shift from spending a lot on very broad marketing to a broad B2C customer where they were attracting a lot of leads, but it was tire kickers and folks who would love to have the product but didn't really have a strong business case or financial backing for it, and really niche down to focus on those leaders in community organizations. So the very first thing that we did, and the first thing that you're going to want to do in your digging down into the data to define your customer segments, is identify what's the data that you do have. And AI is huge in this. So the chart you see next to me there is one that we produced with AI. This used to be the really deep dive, many hours of work part of developing a customer journey. Today with AI tools, and these are the tools that we used in this process, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. We were able to cut sort of the typical analysis time from 40 hours of digging into the data down to 10. And that got us not only great ability to explore the story of the data, what are the important factors for people? Is it how close they live to the facilities that they're considering building? Is it how many decision makers are involved? Is it the size of the YMCA's membership? Those kinds of things, to very quickly building predictive models. And that's what we use KNIME for. So we use DeepNote to evaluate the data. And we also used Custom GPT. We were actually testing tools at that point. So we used both. ChatSpot is HubSpot's AI tool, and this team was on HubSpot as their customer database. So HubSpot is one of those large organizations, and there are many of them out there that are really making big investments in adding artificial intelligence tools to their already existing products. We're really in this place of divergence where so many things are being developed. And I think we'll see that through 2024 and into early 2025. And then we're going to start to see aggregation where those tools either run out of startup funding and they haven't quite found their market yet and they're pricing to be profitable, or they get purchased and bolted together with larger tools. I won't talk a ton today about Copilot and ChatGPT, but I do think those two tools have staying power and a lot of flexibility. And data analysis, where you're organizing messy data and building predictive models and really starting to develop those unique customer journeys where you're defining your audiences, is a great example of where you can use those broader tools. Certainly you want to be sensitive to, are you using something that you pay for? Because if you're using a free tool, what's the product? It's us, right? And in this case with AI, it's our data. So do you want your data training the model? So I definitely don't recommend putting customer data or any of your company data that's not well scrubbed and de-identified into any of the free models. But if you use paid ChatGPT or you have Copilot as part of your Microsoft package, those are great places to start with being able to give common commands, and you don't have to know programming to be able to dig into this stuff. So then the next step we took with this team was we went to supplement the customer profile. And this is, I think, where on the emotional side, we're digging into what's the lead thinking or feeling or doing. But on the data side, we're able to dig into not only their demographics of those leaders, in this case, it was a B2B sale, but we're able to start to look right down to the individual and very small groups. What social media channels are they active on? What times of day are they active? Who are the influencers in the group? Because these are typically large decision-making committees. So how do you start to define maybe that fitness leader from the CEO, from the fundraising and board team that are going to be very influential in the funding component? So you really start to be able to segment the messaging, and that's not just based on roles any longer. By purchasing outside data sources, and I've got some great partners for this, including some folks who may be on this call, we're really able to get into that psychographic behavior. And this is probably one of the most valuable places to have an outside partner who is helping you to identify that lookalike audience so that you can market to the same kinds of people who are already making decisions for your product, and also be able to touch those people who you're nurturing in your pipeline in the ways that are really likely to get to them. This is really where we're able to help companies save tremendously on their marketing spend by making those upfront investments. So when we built out the customer profiles and did that research, honestly, this was where this team got a little bit conservative. So we were able to use Apollo.io, which aggregates information from all over the internet. I'll talk about some more prospecting tools for B2B like that in just a moment. We used LinkedIn Sales Navigator, where we were able to build lookalike audiences and touch those professional audiences there. For this group, we actually also used Facebook because we knew that YMCAs do their own marketing and their own outreach to their communities on Facebook. So in looking at a secondary and tertiary audience and how we really built that demand. And all of these products, including HubSpot, have great AI interfaces that are helping you aggregate that data and pull together that lookalike audience that you can find more people like your current customers. Of course, you got to have great data in your customer database to start with, which fortunately these guys did. From a B2B prospecting perspective, and I started to say earlier, this is where we ran into some cautiousness. So this team had used virtual assistants offshore for several years to do their customer research for them and find who they could be outbound prospecting with. And they were really conservative about testing these tools. So their salespeople tested Hunter and Clearbit, which is now being integrated with HubSpot. They use those tools to do some checking up on where people in current roles, really identify that segment based on not only role, but also demographics and location. We were also able to look at profession, positions, when people had relocated, those kinds of things. Ultimately, after testing these, this was probably what I felt like was the biggest failure in this project, in being able to really persuade them on the value of AI, because it's not perfect yet, right? You are going to get prospects who you reach out to who are no longer in their positions. And Clay.io is one that's come out since then. And Clay is really a tool that I like because it pulls from multiple data sources. I think there are 8 different data sources that it pulls from, including Hunter. But they decided to use the VA still to do this research, which really in everything we were implementing ended up costing a lot more than a 6-month subscription would have. And it took like 6 weeks longer to pull the data, but it was more accurate. And these are the kinds of tough decisions that we're really making in real time with our customers and our businesses, right? Where are we going to make the investments and where are we going to stick with our old ways? It'd be interesting to talk with this team if the conversation today would look the same as these tools are getting more effective. You're able to personalize to a lot more than just demographics. In fact, a lot of these tools will even help you personalize geographically to people's home offices rather than just their business offices. So if you're attracting people to in-person events, that's maybe something that you pay attention to. Social engagement. So this is something that we spent a lot of time on with this team because they had great social engagement on Instagram, on YouTube. They had some LinkedIn engagement at the time, really good engagement on Facebook. All of these tools are quickly adding new algorithms and artificial intelligence. And with the amount of data they're now able to aggregate, they're really helping their clients, advertisers, to be able to target a lot more specific behavior. So you can now target search intent through a lot of these platforms. You can reach out to interest groups. Facebook and LinkedIn are great for those. It'll now recommend to you in some of these social platforms best time of day to reach your common audience and the audience that is engaged with you. It allows you to geofence individuals based on their search intent and their interests. So you might be targeting someone's household who has been shopping for a new car, let's say, or shopping for a new set of golf clubs. And here's what's really interesting too, is not only are you able to target on all this company, industry, all those kinds of things, especially with LinkedIn, but a lot of these social platforms are now rolling in the responsiveness and engagement of individuals so that your messaging and advertising can be served up to customers that are likely to interact with you. This is true with Google Search now as well. And there's a lot of AI tools available for social outreach and response because the platforms have such good investment in AI, and because most of them have a CRM that has social as a component of that. I'm really a believer in tying all of the customer journey together so you can bring all those data points together. So I'm not often recommending an outside tool like Sprout Social or Flick. But if social marketing is your primary kind of marketing, those tools can make sense for you. And both of those have some really great AI components, not just in the way of developing content, but in targeting content, in recommending who to deliver that content to and when to deliver it. I cannot emphasize enough how important video is in the customer journey, largely because people interact with it the most. Because people interact with it the most, it's a super important omnichannel approach. And it is the kind of content that is served up most often if you're looking at social opportunities. It's also the kind of content if you're sending out SMS texts or you're inviting people to events or you are sending out good old-fashioned emails. It's the highest converting kind of content typically. And so certainly one that you want to be taking advantage of. There are so many AI tools that will now help you take that video and convert it right into other content. So this ability to have a podcast first or a video first cascading content strategy that then we develop into social posts and develop into journeys that really follow someone's previous interest and intent and their demographics and all the things we talked about before is really critical to marketing and critical to engaging your customer. And certainly for this organization, definitely proved to be the highest converting in their social media. And as we added it to their email marketing and follow up to prospects and we did a lot of existing customer engagement, existing prospect engagement. That mid-funnel was really a big focus because they had touched a lot of organizations that had not yet made decisions for their products. You're able to personalize that delivery as well to those specific demographics and segments. There's a lot of AI within YouTube now too. So if you're not already meta tagging, using Descript or Synesthesia or something like that to do a great transcript, All of those things help in search. And especially since YouTube's purchased by Google, there is definitely a lot of weight in search for YouTube videos. So a great place to be putting energy and time for sure. Chat. This is probably the conversation I have with organizations the most because chat is such a versatile tool with the benefit of being built on a foundation like OpenAI or Claude or Gemini. Those language learning models play such an important role in being able to use chat for everything from internally, your staff being able to query your HR policies and your employee handbook, to being able to effectively onboard a team member in a way that they've got access to a lot of resources in addition to what that chat is serving to the public. If you're a small organization and if you don't have a learning management system, then chat can be a really good solution for that in the short term. My chat recommendations are really ecosystem specific because there are so many industry specific tools for chat that can be really useful. That said, if your company is looking at building out chat, I think it's really smart to be looking at a multi-model foundation. And by that, I mean something like Google Cloud or AWS services that are going to give you the opportunity as the models continue to grow and change to be able to test and shift from, say, Gemini to OpenAI to Claude to see which is performing best for your language performance, because that's really where the human-like speak is going to come from, right? The research on your policies and your SOPs and your brand experience is going to come from some layer on top of that. And that can either be a custom-built GPT for your company, or it can be some kind of off-the-shelf product like CallMiner, which has awesome AI across its system. It's not just chat, it's also great for call centers and phone. Something like Glean, where you use tokens, and a lot of the off-the-shelf chat tools are token tools. So this is where I spend a lot of time advising clients on what's the right chat solution for them based on their current scale, based on all the use cases. How much will they be using it internally? Is their use more about converting new leads and doing that front end attention grabbing and educating? Or are they using it more for customer experience management to really assure that their customers are getting a great experience once they're already clients? So I love to have conversations about chat. HubSpot has a great chat tool too. That's what we used with the client in our case study. They already had some really good rule-based chat built out, and some of the AI features came out while we were in the midst of our process. So we didn't have to do a lot except add some new resources for information so that that chat could be more meaningful for the customer. So customer retention and referral, this is so specific to the organization. So some of the things we did in our case study is we put out some real-time customer surveys. Installation was a really important point of customer experience and satisfaction. The team wanted to be able to resolve any installation concerns quickly. And there's some break-in time on the fields. And so they expect that they'll have to go back and do a sort of touch-up visit later on, but they want to be catching those things early. So there are a lot of great tools out there for building real-time surveys. If you're a retail environment, that may be having a survey that's geofenced that someone gets as they're leaving your store. If you're a service delivery group like a landscaping company or a gutter cleaning company, it might be something that's based in your scheduling software. So that's why I say it's so ecosystem specific. But a couple of tools that can be really useful for this, kind of tying together the operational and scheduling systems and your customer database, where probably most of the rest of your customer journey lives, are tools like Zapier and Make. And these are great tools for all kinds of things. They can snap together your billing system with your customer database. They can also snap together behaviors from LinkedIn or social media. If your customer database doesn't support that integration, it can help with that as well. So these tools have really reduced the need for API buildouts and for custom integrations when we're talking about simple rule-based things. So it automates that build. So a lot of the things you've heard me talk about through the process are not AI actually being the agent and doing everything down the road. We used a lot of AI in the initial research and build out, and that was really intentional for a couple of reasons. This organization, only 20 employees, no full-time marketing person, the sales guys and the owner handle the marketing stuff. no full-time IT person. And so in small and mid-sized businesses, when I go in, part of what I help them think through is what additional systems do you want to maintain? So using AI in the build doesn't give them challenging layers of technology that are both added expenses and added black boxes, really, that can be more difficult to maintain and have more points of failure, right? There's more potential for those to break. So we really looked closely when we were in the build process with this organization on how could we build out some rule-based automations that they could still get into and see the workflows, but we used AI for those builds. Oftentimes people think when I come in or we're going to implement AI and replace our systems, very often what I find is of 10 recommendations I'm giving an organization, usually 4 to 6 of them are fully utilizing their existing systems and building out simple automations. And that may look different 6 months from now or a year from now as agents become more able to replicate more steps in the process and actually take action. But seasonal reminders, things like that are great things to look at how we automate that process. This is where we really start to look at the repetitive work. And the other piece of this is happy customers, right? We want to get to review requests and really talking about the things that make people remain customers and come back. That is one area I think where AI is helping organizations make leaps in really improving their customer reputation and their rankings. And so Yext, GatherUp, and Reputation are all tools that each have their own great features. Some have more AI around the ask for reviews. Some, like GatherUp, do a great job of aggregating all that, giving you the sentiment analysis and some of the analytics around it. Just really depends on what your needs are and what's going to be best for you on that. And then measuring results, right? I grew up in the sales world that said if it isn't in the database, it didn't happen. And certainly if you're going to measure the investments you're making in AI and that specific targeted, personalized customer journey where you're really segmenting out your customers, there are some assumptions we have to make in that segmenting. There's a lot of data, but ultimately people have to get grouped, right? Whether you're using linear regression in a predictive model or you're doing it a little bit manually. Having great dashboards, having good distribution, and then continuing to refine both the process of how that customer journey is operating. The timing is an important thing to continue to refine and automate, and something that a lot of AI tools will do for you. Not only will they serve up email to someone or SMS messages to someone at a time that they have seen in the past, they're likely to get checked, but they'll also continue to refine that for your whole journey as well, which is a really cool added feature that's taken a lot of work out. This chart on the right is a pretty simple one. This isn't super segmented. It's our returning visitors to the website and our new visitors. One of the goals of this project was to increase website traffic to an existing website. They also had a second website we were optimizing that was brand new. And so we were able to grow that 20%. But I think setting up that kind of measurement early in the process and setting common goals, right? What are we going to measure is really, really important in these customer journey builds. In the long run, we had some pretty great results in a pretty short period of time. We did this measurement at the 120-day mark. So that was 120 days after starting the initial assessment. And we saw in that time their existing website, we were able to increase traffic 21%. A large part of that increase was the target market we were really focused on. As a result, we saw a nice bump in traffic to lead conversion, up 10%. And then social interaction with that target market, we increased 500%, which blew us out of the water. It was pretty remarkable. And we were surprised by that. But it's because we really shifted our messaging to the messaging and the images that were most important to this customer. And a lot of the investment of this organization had been in the social space. All of these results we drove, they were not making any advertising investments at this time. So that was one of the really remarkable things. All of this was grown with organic. And then a brand new website that had no SEO work done. The site had just launched. We got that up to 150 visitors a week in the first 30 days. And that was really a site that was targeted at the messaging of this new customer. There's a link here to an academic case study that we did on this client not too long ago, just published in April. So where do you start? You've got this long list of things. If you're thinking about your own organization that you've written down through this conversation, how do you take a methodical approach to the growth that you want to have? And at RevOp AI, that's exactly what we do. We help organizations figure out we can't eat the whole elephant at once. And we work with small and mid-sized businesses that have limited budgets. So how do we help them start in ways that are going to be really identify the low lift, big win adoptions that are going to be adopted by their team? And we could have a whole separate conversation on that, identifying champions and the change management within the team. That's certainly a piece of it that we help with. But we really have this methodical approach of looking first, what are those repetitive things that somebody is spending 15% of their time on doing again and again and again every single day? And a lot of times in the customer journey, that's in the customer service part, less in the marketing and sales process, and more in getting out invoices, assuring appointment reminders go out. Some of those really repetitive tasks are often the first place that we can automate and bring in AI and then free up people to be able to be more productive and talk to more customers or more potential customers. And that's where the productivity comes in. If you could touch more people, what would you want to be able to do more of that could help you grow to a new market or could grow your bottom line? So really looking at those efficiency and productivity things, and those are usually fast adoption, quick wins. They often, but not always, can be kind of a low lift technically and a low lift from a training perspective. And they really get a pain point out of the way for the team. So the team gets really bought in to the process, which is always great. And certainly as a leader of teams for years, that buy-in I found is the most important thing in this process. You can build beautiful systems, but if there's not belief and trust, and I think one of you brought up as you came on, like, oh, I'm kind of nervous about this AI thing. So we know trust is a challenge, not the biggest challenge out there based on some surveys we've done recently. But if you can build that trust with my job is getting easier, I enjoy my work more. We've actually seen in a lot of customer service environments, the use of AI to coach and sort of be that co-pilot to ride along with the chat is really improving team member satisfaction and reducing turnover. That's really exciting. So that's when we get to customer experience being better, right? So identifying what are those things that are going to improve the customer experience. And that customer experience is sometimes the external customer, but sometimes it's a department within your organization. Sometimes it's the field team, or it's the delivery team, or it's the team that is on the phones all day long or out there delivering the services. That's the next piece we focus on. And then if we're doing all those things right, and this stuff doesn't happen by the time you get to that third part of the pyramid, you've probably been at this for a while with your planning and implementation. But then you free up for real creativity and value creation, right? So now what do we do to build an app that we didn't have before, or get into a new service line, or use the talented people who are now no longer doing repetitive tasks to be able to grow the business in a really exciting way? Here are just a few of those things that you might think about. What in your business, what in that customer experience is repetitive or rule driven? And then what's data intensive? That's a lot of that front end work that I talked about. And it's the reporting as well. But how do we bring pricing development, prospect research, competitive analysis, keyword research for some of our content development? How do we bring those things in a little bit more control with AI? And then how do we do that predictive modeling that maybe we haven't had the chance to do before? So as you think about your leader's role in AI, I'll send this, there's a handout that covers some of this stuff that I'll send to you as well as a follow-up. We've talked about a lot of this stuff, and I'm not going to get too deep, but I do want to talk about the ensuring ethics piece. I feel like you can never do an AI workshop without talking about ethics component. And I invite you guys to come off mute, and I would love to hear, I guess, what at this point, based on what you've learned today and what you've seen so far in your own environments, what are some of the ethical concerns that you have?
Mine's not so much an ethical concern. I think where I always go back to is when I'm getting a lot of content from potential prospects or from even my candidates, and they're like, oh, I this is AI generated. And I'm like, well, what's the truth though? And we have to remember. So I think it's about making sure that the data and the things that we're acquiring through AI is factual, is true. You lose that efficiency that AI does for you by fact checking. And so I didn't know if you had any
point. You'll notice I didn't talk about AI tools for content here. Boy, whole own bear, because I know I've seen as my own kids are drafting cover letters with it comes up with stuff that they absolutely didn't do. So that is a little bit terrifying for sure.
And yet, even as in business development, making sure that I am okay, is that really true? Okay, where is that source? How do I verify that in case,
Right.
just so that everything's transparent and honest.
I didn't get a lot into this, and part of it is we're not really serving ourselves as marketers and business developers if we are using AI to generate a lot of content for us. And I want to talk a little bit about why. Because as search engines, language learning models, and social media are
Mhm.
all implementing their own AI, they're constantly adding new screens, just like you think about years ago and even current day, all the cybersecurity layers that we add
Mhm.
to assure that we're not being scammed that way. All these models are adding more and more layers to identify AI generated content, and they're actually deprioritizing it. They're deprioritizing it in search results, they're doing it in language learning model summaries that come out, and they're deprioritizing it in social media. So it's a really interesting spot that Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram is in, where they've got the button that says, use AI to generate your response. And then it also
Yep.
says, make sure you add your own stuff. I have found more and more that I am choosing to advise clients against, and I am choosing myself to use AI less and less for content development, because I
Okay.
think over time, we're just going to see, from a marketing perspective anyway, that content deprioritized. So using it for outlining, using it for providing a structure, using it for doing research, and I love Perplexity AI for that, are all great ways to use it. But I don't really recommend it for writing, especially if you're a good writer. Now, how you
Thank
sort it out on
you.
the back end, we're not going to cover in this program, but I'm going to give you a tool at the end that you can actually look one up. So we'll get to that
Thank
here shortly. I've talked a little bit today about how we help organizations that are in this journey, because it really is hard to figure out where to start. Not only do we do education programs like this for organizations, but we also come in and do hands-on workshops. And those hands-on workshops can be about empowering your team, really getting them hands-on in some free technology if they haven't been using AI. I've done a lot of these, and we see adoption at least double every time through that process of just getting hands-on and building some confidence and discussing the ethics and data privacy. We also really will help your team get from brainstorm to blueprint. And these are best when they're 2 hour to half day workshops, really building out your AI implementation strategy, where we think through who are those champions, what's the time frame for implementation, what's our budget, how do we prioritize use cases, even doing some time studies in our ongoing engagements with folks that help us to identify what are those repetitive and productivity tasks that we can get to first to really create wins for the team. If your organization, or if you know someone who would benefit from that, we'd be more than happy to talk with them. We offer free consults. And here is that tool I mentioned. So there's an AI for that. This site would be a great site for you to go to, Anna, to take a look and see if there are fact checking. What's the fact checking stuff out there? Now I'll be thinking about that tonight. If you're determined to do all this work yourself, but you kind of don't know where to start with the content, there is a pretty simple GPT that you've got a link to here, and that will give you a suggested outline for some of the kinds of things you might add into the customer journey that you build. It does not write it for you, but it would give you a little bit of a framework to get started if it's something that you want to do on your own. I appreciate you all joining me. It's been a real pleasure to get a little bit further acquainted. Anna, I think you're joining us for the AI in the Future of Work program next week. So that'll be really relevant to the work that you do and the way roles are changing and some of the retraining challenges that are out there. I've been in meetings lately with Google and Amazon and state leaders, and there aren't solutions yet. So we've got a long way to go. Well, thank you for joining us.